Do you have an unfinished room in your basement, that place where your HVAC and your water heater, water softener, all those things that make life cozy and comfortable, they all reside together, but the room is completely unfinished? And does it also happen that your laundry room exists in that space? Well, that's my situation. And rather than spend money to completely make it a finished room, we're going to make it a fairy tale room. So let's go see how that works. All right, this is the before of my laundry room. Bare concrete floor, not very healthy looking drywall, completely unfinished ceiling. It's sort of the brains of the house, the neural network of the house. All of the air conditioning ventilation comes from this room. The water pipes run through here. Lots of the electrical run through here. So rather than try to make a drop ceiling and work around all this, I decided we're just going to pretend it's not there, and we're going to try to just make it fun. Now, I'd been planning on doing something with this room, but it was when I found these cabinets on Marketplace that I decided it was time to go ahead and get started. So, of course, the first thing you do is empty out your room and find out how much stuff, even though you've only lived in this house a couple of years, how much stuff you have accumulated. Gave everything a good cleaning, mopped, dusted, wiped down the walls. Okay, so we know the top, I know the cabinets are 30 inches exactly from the top to the bottom. That includes the amount overhanging the top and on the underneath side. So I have measured down here, and this is 30 inches right here, and that will go right up to that pipe. All right, and I took my level, put it across here, and drew a line. I don't know if you can see that line. I just got it straight. So this is going to be the bottom of the cabinets. All right. Then we have to mark studs. Now, there is a lot going on in this room, and I'm always scared of puncturing a water line, or, of course, worse, an electric line. But one thing about this ceiling not being finished, I can see where, like, I can see where the pipes go in. You can see those pipes right there and right there. So I know those come down. There's a bathtub and a toilet and a sink on the other side of that wall in that other bathroom. If you've never used a stud finder, let's bring this in closer. This is this Heart brand. This is one of the best ones I've ever owned. I got it at Walmart. It's not the cheapest one out there. I really like it. Let's just start here so I know I'm in camera range. There's a blue button here. You push down on that and you get it against the wall. And you want to get it somewhere where the red light, or I guess it could be different lights, but in this case it's a red light. Okay, so, and then you just slide. Okay, see the red light? So the studs right here, I generally get it centered. There's a little notch right here on the back, and I know that this notch is the center of that stud. Now we're cheating a little bit here because whoever put these closet-made shelves in here, they did attach to studs in, but I have to double check because some of them did have, the little plastic fittings inside for when you don't have a stud. So we know that's one. Let's go. Let's see, are we still in here? And of course, this will be different if you have metal studs. I know that the studs in this house are wood. What I'm going to do is I can't keep you all in the frame here, so I'm going to go and I'm going to mark all the studs, and then I'm going to take my level, or try this. I'll show you. I don't know if this shows up. I'm really never sure if the laser level light shows up with my camera photo lights or not. I don't know if you can see that. So what I'll do is I will line this vertical line up with each one of these, I will take my level, just to kind of double check it and to get a straight line, and I will mark these to extend past the 30-inch line both sides, because I'm going to need to be able to see where those studs are, both below and above, depending on where I'm at when I'm climbing around on a ladder or on top of the washing machine trying to get these installed. I ended up having to open the wall for two reasons. Number one, I needed to add more 2x4s. You see those 4 horizontal 2x4s I added at the top and the bottom of each opening, because I needed more space to attach the individual pieces of the cabinets to the wall. And another reason, I wanted to double check where all the plumbing and the pipes and everything were, because I was getting some crazy readings from my stud finder when I got down into this area. So that's why this is opened up like this. That's why I added those extra 2x4s. And then I just closed it up with some drywall scraps, and I'm ready to apply my cabinets. The green tape is actually the perimeter of the cabinet, so I could really get a visual idea of the space. All right, my camera space filled up while I was filming this video. So I did a little digital sketch to show you how I do this. I just add a temporary 2x4 along the bottom edge, and then I just rest my cabinets on that as I put the attachments across the top. And once you have it secured across the top, you can go on with the rest of it very safely and easily, and then you just remove your 2x4. When I paint a large space with chalkboard paint, I always do the first coat with just plain black wall paint. It's a lot less expensive than the chalkboard paint, and you really don't need the qualities of the chalkboard paint except for the top coat. So this saves a little bit of money. People have definite ideas about how tall beadboard should be, but I have so much going on in this room and so many different levels of height that I just went with cutting the sheet in half. So the panels were 48 inches. I primed them and painted them after I cut them and before I installed them. I used the laser level to make sure that I was installing them straight, and I attached them with construction adhesive and brads. Pick one of your colors and paint the entire floor that color. Then decide how big you want your checkerboard, your checks, and cut a pattern from a piece of poster board. Measure to roughly the center of the room in one direction, and then just as anywhere that you can get a nice straight measured line so that it is consistent all the way across the space. You can see those lines that I drew there, and then just mark everything with chalk, using your poster board pattern as a template. And now you're going to use painter's tape, and you're going to tape your squares off. You see how I have these alternating, going around the outside of the alternating squares. And then I add that second color, 2 coats. And when I pull the tape off, very often there'll be a little bleeding, so prepare yourself to do a second coat on your original color as well. This island was 2 sets of double cabinets attached together. Now I need these to roll, because if we ever have to have the air conditioning, the HVAC unit repaired, we will have to roll this out of the way. So I flipped it up on its side, and I cut pieces of 4x4 posts, the depth of the space under the kickboard, and I attached those with wood glue and drywall screw, or wood screws or drywall screws, through the side panel. Now trim will cover up those ugly screws, so don't worry about that. I added a post at each corner, and then I also added 2 in the center so that it wouldn't allow the cabinet unit to sag. And then I just added a caster on the bottom of each post using screws, and we're ready to go. We are mobile. First thing you want to do is measure. You want to measure at the widest point. And then you want to add 1/4 inch to these measurements. Measure front to back. And the reason you want to add 1/4 inch is you want to make sure that when we attach these facing boards around the edge of the plywood, that it will sit down on there. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Oh, one other thing, you want to, especially if you're using reclaimed cabinets, you want to measure corner to corner like this, and that should be the same, because sometimes, especially if cabinets are removed, they can get a little wonky, and so then you would need to put a little more bracing in there and straighten them up. But ours are good. So I have already cut to fit a piece of 3/4 inch oak. Put it on there sideways. Now I do not have this lower unit installed yet, so it's not quite all the way up against the wall. Let me pull it out here. There we go. So it just has a tiny bit of an overhang all the way around, just like we wanted it. Now I have taken some poplar. This piece is the piece that goes along the front, and I have mitered. Okay, so this is the board. This is the face of the board, right? Or this is the part that goes against the cabinet. Okay, so we're going to turn it, and you can see how I mitered it at a 45-degree angle because we're going to frame this piece of plywood. This is one of my favorite ways to make countertops. You get to use plywood, you get the simplicity of using plywood, but you get the beefier, more finished look of, you know, another, like a slab when you finish off the edges. So let's take a little bit of wood glue. And you can take your finger or a brush and smear it around, or you can just do this, kind of wiggle it back and forth. You want to make sure your edges are lined up. And this is the hard part about doing video. You want to actually look down on it. And you want to get the top edge of this board completely lined up with the top of your plywood. And you want to make sure, I'm using a brad nailer on this because it makes very tiny little holes in here, so they're very easy to fill with wood filler. This is what I'm using. You want to make sure that they're long enough to go through your finishing trim piece all the way, a substantial amount, into the plywood. And really, the real bond is going to be your wood glue, but this will hold it in place until it sets. You want to make sure you can do this at an angle so that it goes in to the plywood at a little bit of an angle, and that gives you a better grip. It kind of pulls everything together. But you just don't want to have it slanting upward, because then it comes through the top of your plywood and makes you very upset. You have to get the wire cutters out or the snippers out, pull it all out, fill in the wood. It's just, you just want to be careful here. I have on glasses, so I have eye protection anyway. And this has stopped working. So we're going to hold on for this straight. This side is still beveled at the 45-degree angle. This is, and then I'll just match these up. Add glue again. This time I'm going to add some to the end. By the way, Gorilla Glue, not a sponsor, but if there is an adhesive product and it's made by Gorilla, I have never been disappointed. They figured something out. Now, we are not attaching this to the cabinet when we do this. We're just attaching the side trim pieces to the ends of the plywood to clean up that plywood edge. And then we will do the same thing over there. I don't think I can't get between the camera and that edge to do that. So what we'll do now is I'll get a damp cloth. I'll clean up any excess glue that may have come up, and then we will sand this and get everything nice and smooth. And then I'll show you how I stained it to get sort of to make sure this oak doesn't turn orange, and to get kind of a really neutral, almost blonde tone. All right, what I have here is just my wall paint. This is the paint that I used on the wainscoting. It's been Sherwin-Williams 7506 Loggia, Loggia. I am not sure I'm pronouncing it right. Now this is emerald urethane because I also used it on the cabinet, so I wanted something with a little more durability for rough and tumble that cabinets take, but you wouldn't have to use that. Any latex acrylic paint that you have, you can use. Like, it's important to remember that anytime you put anything with water in it on raw wood, it's going to raise the grain. So you will, unless you just want a really rough looking finish, you will always have to sand after this dries to take off those raised bits of grain fibers, wood fibers. Okay, I have this mixed about 50-50 water and paint. It's about like milk. And got my ever handy chip brush. And I just make sure that I get a good coat on everything. I'll go against the grain every now and then to make sure that I'm forcing it down into any open grain to get good coverage. You don't really have to worry about going with the grain at this stage. You just want to get it coated because we're going to use our rag to wipe off, and then we will follow the grain in that step. You want to use a clean, lint-free cloth for this, and then just wipe in the direction of the grain. I do a section at a time, as I've done here, and then wipe it off because this does dry pretty quickly. And if you try to do big sections at a time without wiping off what you've already done, you can end up with splotchiness. This wiping it off in small sections keeps it pretty even and keeps a nice uniform look. Okay, the paint coat has had about an hour and a half to dry. Watered down paint doesn't take very long to dry. In fact, I did the bigger countertop for the rolling island out in the driveway, and it was dry in 30 minutes. But because I'm working in a basement, I gave it more time. And now I am just giving it a quick sand with 220 sandpaper. And another note, you see this countertop flopping around. I have not attached it yet because I still need to put another coat on of paint on the base of the cabinets. When everything is all finished and the countertop is dry, I will attach it with screws from underneath and it won't be flopping around like that. But I gave it a quick sand, and now I'm using a clean cloth to wipe away any dust. Look at all that dust flying around there. That's what high def is good for, showing all the dust. So I give it a good wipe down. And now I have some watered down stain. And I've got it in a very high-tech container that I think mushrooms came in. And again, I have it watered down to the consistency of whole milk. And as always, I'm using a chip brush. The product I'm using here is this Varathane wood stain. Now, it's not something that has the finish in it. I find those harder to work with because they tend to get tacky more quickly, and they don't move around once they get sticky. So you just want the stain, and then we'll put a separate finish on when everything's dry. Same process. Chip brush, I'm using the same one. I just wiped it clean with a damp rag, and I just make sure I get everything well coated. This will not get as dark as raw wood will because we've put a bit of a barrier between the wood and the stain, but it is a very thin barrier, so some of that stain will still find porous places to absorb it. So you don't have to worry about it just standing on top and not getting down into the surface. And I just sort of crosshatch, go any which way to make sure that I force that stain into any areas that will take it. When I start taking this off, it kind of looks like I'm taking everything off. I have these bright lights shining on this so that I can film, and it really washes out the color. It has a richer color than this image shows. But you can see I just try to get it as even as possible. It's sort of allowing that grain to pop back out. That's what I was talking about. It still leaves some porous areas that will take the stain a little bit, but it blocks it from turning that orange color that I'm not looking for in here. I don't dislike an amber tone to wood, but that's not what I want in here. You want to be sure that you don't forget the edges. Just brush it on. I find that doing it this way in a vertical motion and then just wiping it off with the grain, the easiest way to do it. And in this video, it looks like I forgot that back corner on the left side. I didn't. The camera was set up there, so I had to finish up after I moved the camera out of the way. But I didn't forget it. I let that stain dry a couple of hours, and here again it is lighter, a little bit lighter than it actually is because of the filming lights. But now I'm applying the top coat. I'm using a General Finishes satin to give this a good coat. Now, this is great for a work surface, for a laundry room like we're using it here. This would not be adequate for a kitchen countertop. So you want to keep that in mind. This is just think of it as a general non-food related, not heavy water, moisture use surface. Just something that you would fold laundry on or just have in an office. Now I'm using this little foam applicator, and these things are amazing. You dampen it just a little bit, wring out all the water you can, and then you just dip it in your water-based finish. And it just, as long as you don't push on it and try to force out air bubbles, it gives you a completely beautiful bubble-free finish. And you don't always get that with foam applicators, but this is amazing. Now, it does go on thin, so it does take multiple applications. I think I ended up putting 3 coats, but because it's so thin, it dries quickly. I give it a light sand with 220 or 320 sandpaper, wipe it down, and then very quickly, in just a couple of minutes, put another coat on. Here are a couple of finishing details in bringing this project together. I reused the hardware that came with those cabinets they bought off Marketplace. I put them in the crock pot for an old crock pot that I don't use anymore, with Dawn, and let them sit a couple of hours. Gave them a good rinse, dried them off, and then I gave them 3 light coats of the ever wonderful Rust-Oleum Universal paint in oil rubbed bronze, and I just gave them a couple of days to get good and dry. That is very important. And then I built these. I used just some pine stock lumber, and I built these sort of cottagey looking shelf brackets. And the shelves themselves, I built just exactly like that countertop for that small cabinet. It's just I made them elongated, more long than square, and mounted these on the wall, and then mounted those shelves on top. I did stain these with the same process I did the countertops. Would have ever thought that a laundry room would be such a happy place. Just something about these little fairy lights. I walk in this room and I feel like I need to lower my tone of voice. I feel like my blood pressure goes down. It's just so light feeling. And I won't say that the mountain of laundry still doesn't accumulate now and then, but far less often. This is such a great place to just grab the clothes out of the dryer, set them here, fold them, and they're ready to put away. We've got the little laundry chute right here, and the dirty clothes are right here when it's time to pick them up and do laundry. It's just magical. Now, as far as the baskets, I saw this in a country living magazine in the 80s. It wasn't a laundry room, it was a garden room, I believe. And there was just a mass of baskets just crushed together hanging from the ceiling. And I still have that picture in my mind. And I thought, what better way to sort of distract from all the goings on of this ceiling than to get my love of baskets on display. So I didn't really buy a lot of baskets because I'm always picking them up along the way. I have for years and years. So this is a many decade collection of baskets. I have bought a few here and there, and quite often I come down here and I rob one and have to replace it. Let's talk about the cost of all this and how you can make it suit the space you have. Let's talk about costs. The beadboard panels, I used 4 of those cut in half. $28 each board, came to $112. The baseboards, I bought 6 of those at $12, came to $72. The paint, that was $215 for the wall paint, the cabinet paint, the primer, and some spray paint for the hardware on the cabinets. That does not include the floor paint. I have quite a bit of all of that left. Plywood, 1 sheet of oak plywood, $90. That I used for the countertops and the shelves. The trim boards, 8 of those at $9.18 for a total of $73.44. Screws, Velcro to hold that sink skirt on, hooks, that kind of thing, came to $30. Wallpaper, 2 rolls at $33.74, came to $67.48. The Magical lights, 2 strings of those cost $36.99 each for a total of $73.98. Floor paint, 2 gallons, 1 of each color at $40 per gallon, $80. Drywall patch, $8. Pine for the shelf brackets, 3 sticks of that at $4 each for a total of $12. My Habitat Restore light fixture from many years ago, $6. My flea market Ethan Allen chair in perfect condition that also I found several years ago and saved at $15. And then my cabinets, I paid $150 for those, but they came with a large piece of quartz countertop that I did not need, so I was able to sell that back on Marketplace for $75, which gave me a net cost of those cabinets of $75. The total cost, $929.90. Let's look at some ways you could reduce that cost for your own project. Those beadboard panels, I used those because I had wall damage, and I decided it was the most time and cost-effective way to remedy that. Now, if your walls were okay and you didn't need that, that saves $112 right there. I needed more actual light in that space. It was very dark. That's why I bought the string lights with the larger bulbs, and that made them more expensive. White Christmas lights would give you the same magical twinkle if you already have enough usable light in your space, and it would save you at least $50. And I didn't have any closed storage. I didn't have any work surfaces in there. So the cabinets were really necessary. I added 16 linear feet of cabinetry. And that, if you didn't need that, that would save you $75 plus a big chunk of this $215 for paint. So those are some ways that you could save if you didn't need those items. One of the best things about projects like this, where you really aren't worried about rules, you just want to make sure the space is usable but fun, is that you can get creative to solve little problems. For instance, I had accepted that I was just going to have these 3 pieces of equipment, the water heaters, water softener, and the HVAC system, because I didn't want to deal with a screen that was going to take up space and get knocked over. I'm just going to learn to ignore it and accept it. I call that it is what it is decorating. But something about this big chunk of sheet metal just right here hitting you in the face as soon as you walked in the door, I decided I wanted to do a little something to dampen that a little bit. So I love old Vogue magazine covers. So I just searched the internet and I found this one. This is from July 15th, 1910. And I just liked the lines of it. I changed the proportions a little bit and I changed the colors from the original cover. This is by an artist named Jessie Gillespie, which is the coolest name I've ever heard in my life. She was an interesting lady who made a living as a commercial artist in the early 1900s when women didn't always find a way to make a living with their art. So she's worth learning about. So I had some canvas. I just cut it. I painted it with the wall color. I stitched a little pocket in the top and bottom and put some doweling that I had, some command hooks that I had in the drawer. Oh, one little trick. If you need to put something up and you would really like to have them like a metallic looking command strip instead of those plasticky white ones, a little tip. If you already have a can of that oil rub bronze or silver, that good universal metallic spray paint, buy the white ones and then just paint them. They paint beautifully, and if you already have the paint, they're about 1/3 of the price of buying the metallic looking ones. Just a little extra little bit of a tip there. And I just hung the dowel across there, and I did my best to just try to sketch her out and paint her. And so now I have something that doesn't vibrate against this when the air conditioner or the furnace is running. I may go ahead and try to make something else, or add something else to the bottom so it goes all the way to the bottom. But it's just a little thing that was free, fun, and I got to learn about Jessie Gillespie. One little thing that I put together absolutely for free was this little hanging light fixture. Now, this is an old shelf bracket that was at the bottom of a box of just knickknacks, this and that I bought at a flea market probably 10 years ago. This, I broke a lamp a long time ago, and when I break a lamp, I go ahead and just take all the electrical workings out, and I have a box just full of lamp parts. And I just found one, wrapped some twine, hot glued it every now and then to cover the cord, and I did some little cord trapper clips to the plug-in back here. I had this old burlap lampshade, the clip-on type, in my stash, and boom, got a light fixture. Quick little sketch of my grandson in a frame that I thrifted 15 years ago. So all that was just in storage, and I dug it out, and there it is, a nice little vignette for no money. Well, the party's over. It's time to actually do laundry in the laundry room, but at least it's a beautiful space. Next week, we'll do another Creativations project that makes your home cozier without breaking the bank. Videos come out every Saturday. I hope to see you there. Until then, be creative, be curious, and always, always be kind. Bye-bye.